We are live, I believe. I'll set. Okay. Good morning, everyone. This is Senate Transportation Committee, and our next topic this morning is new bridge formula funding proposal. And we have some folks from the Agency of Transportation. I guess Kevin Marcia is with us, Rob White, and Kristen Higgins, and Bradley Kupenberger. So who would like to lead off this morning? Tell us what this is all about.
Morning, Senator. This is
Good
Kevin.
morning, Kevin. How are you?
I will lead off this morning, and
we just love having you back. You know,
I love being back, to be honest with you. So I'm going to just share my present screen real quick, and
Sure.
then I will get started.
Okay.
Hopefully, you can see that now.
You're probably driving truck tomorrow for the snowstorm. You know, you folks are sure to help. So
I would be happy to help, but I'm not sure they'd want me driving a plow truck, Senator.
They haven't asked me either. So
So for the record, Kevin Marcia, Director of the Asset Management Bureau, and as you are well aware, we're going to talk to you about a new program that you'll be seeing language in the transportation bill on this year. And if I can get technology to work, I will advance my slides. There we go. Okay, so when Congress passed the new federal transportation bill this past fall, they established what's referred to as a general fund bridge program. And it's really a set aside for bridges. In Vermont, it's approximately $225 million that's set aside just specifically for bridges, kind of above and beyond our normal formula funds. And there's a provision in that makes eligible up to for 100% project share of federal monies for off-system bridges. An off-system bridge is one of those bridges that's on a roadway that's not eligible for federal funding. So in Vermont, typically those are kind of our low volume roads that are owned and maintained by a municipality, not always, but many times like a gravel road with a lower traffic volume that has a bridge on it. Those are the bridges that would be eligible for this 100% federal money. So what FHWA, what Congress established within that bill was, I'll say, a floor, in that they're requiring states to spend 15% of that general fund bridge program for off-system bridges. In Vermont, what we've done, and you're going to see what we're proposing kind of coming up in a few slides, is we're proposing to spend approximately $80 million or invest $80 million over the life of the bill in off-system bridges. That equates to approximately just shy of 40% of the dollars associated with this program. So while the baseline minimum requirement is 15% of the funds, we're proposing to spend over double that on off-system bridges. What we are proposing to do with this is that we would fund the construction phase of off-system bridge projects 100% federal, and then the engineering and right-of-way phases would be funded at the kind of normal project share, which would be 80% federal, 10% state, and 10% town match. And I'll give you some. Well, I guess I can do it right now. Kind of a justification for that is part of our proposal. There's two pieces that you're going to see here in a little bit. Part of it is existing off-system bridges that were already in the capital program, in the town highway bridge program. Those were already programmed and funded with FHWA at the 80-10-10. And once you've started funding a phase of a project, you can't go back and change the funding ratio. So that's part of the reason for the 80-10-10. And then another piece of that is in our kind of quote normal formula funds that we get from FHWA annually, there's also a set aside for off-system bridges. And so we want to continue to draw those funds down as well, while making sure we take advantage to the greatest extent we can this 100% federal dollars as well.
Kevin, is there a ceiling on what if a bridge is like $50 million? Is there a ceiling on how much you could spend for a local bridge?
No, there is not a ceiling here on how much we could spend. I mean, the ceiling would be the amount of dollars, approximately $225 million that are in total in this program.
So it's first come, first served. That's the way it's going to work. Or?
Well, you'll see in the proposal kind of what we've laid out and,
All right, go
how
ahead.
we would
I'll-
suggest investing in that.
Okay.
So kind of getting to that specific question, I believe Senator Mazza is there's two different areas that we're proposing to invest in this 100% federal funds for the construction phase. The first is that we have 15 projects that are currently in our capital program that are under design or right away and will be going to construction. You know, they're in the white book under the Town Highway Bridge tab. What we've done, we've identified 15 of those, which is all of the ones off-system bridges that are eligible in the existing capital program. We've identified those to be funded as part of this 100% federal share. These are projects that have already been selected, they've already been prioritized, and they've already begun work. So that's the first phase of this program. The second phase where we would propose to invest is in historic bridges, whether either covered bridges or metal trusses. These are the projects that are, you know, we hear about a lot. They're important, you know, to the communities. There's history associated with them. Typically, they're on the lower volume roads, many of them on non-federal aid roads. And really, because of the low volume nature of the roads, many times when funding is tight, these are not the bridges that make the cut in terms of funding the necessary improvements. And I got a little bit more I'll share on that in a little bit. What we're proposing would invest in 19 of these historic bridges, 10 are covered bridges and 9 are metal trusses. And they would be included in the FY23 capital program and then would begin the engineering phase in the coming years and ultimately the construction within the life of the IIJA bill. In total, that is 34 bridges and 31 communities around the state that would see the construction phase reduced to 0%. This proposal saves approximately $8 million worth of town match, and it should be mentioned that it also saves $8 million worth of state match because of that typical 80-10-10. We'd be converting the construction phase to 100%. I'm going to pause there. I've got a list of bridges, and we can get into a little bit more detail, but just wanted to see if there were any additional comments before I move forward.
How many years we have to spend the money?
There's 5 years, but then beyond it's kind of our obligational authority from the feds. And then beyond that, you get a couple of years after when you would actually obligate the funds to actually expend the funds down.
Sounds like a good program. These bridges would never be taken care of if it wasn't for this. Then
the historic bridges is certainly an opportunity to invest in bridges that during tighter financial times, certainly we probably wouldn't be getting to all 19 of those, and probably just a few of them to be, you know, more than likely.
Okay, any questions before he moves on, committee? No, they're all up in the Northeast Kingdom, so that's I haven't heard from Senator Ingles yet.
Well, I have to admit that I was thinking about examples because when we presented to House Transportation, there was a lot of discussion on what is an on-system and what is an off-system bridge, and I have to admit that when I looked at the map and I was thinking of examples, whether they be in, you know, Newport, Danville, or Plainfield, I could come up with some examples of on-system or off-system bridges. But when you talk about South Burlington or Grand Isle, most of the bridges there are on-system bridges just because of the traffic volumes.
We don't, Mr. Marshy, we all don't have drawbridges in our district.
Oh, I knew that was coming up. I knew that was coming up. I was waiting for that one.
Understood, Senator.
It's just a miscellaneous project. Okay, go ahead, Kev.
So the next is just a list of, it breaks down the two categories that I spoke of. The first is the existing capital program projects. These are the projects that are currently in the book. And you'll see that, you know, the projects are listed as well as their construction estimate. There's about $53 million of construction funding that's identified in the out years already in the capital program you have before you. And this would be the list of projects that we would propose moving forward with. An interesting note is there actually is one historic bridge in here, which is the Salisbury Cornwall covered bridge that burnt several years ago. That's actually a historic bridge as well, but it's on this list because it's an existing capital program project.
Yes, go right ahead. Yep.
Kevin, so can you explain again how the list was chosen? Did you just go to the existing book and just go down the line, or was there some other
These,
way?
we went to the existing town highway bridge program and chose every project that would be eligible as an off-system bridge for this program. So this represents, there's obviously more town highway bridges. This represents every off-system bridge that would be eligible for this program.
But is it all the bridges that'd be eligible, or did you run out of money and like have some that would be outside?
This is all of those that would be eligible for the off-system bridge program.
And there's enough money to do all of them?
Yes.
Committee, I just had a message pop up, something about the bridge system was a bust. Did you just get that?
No, I think that you may be seeing something that popped up on my screen, so.
Yeah, we're getting Teams meeting notes.
I
Okay.
can't handle two things at one time.
My apologies. I rushed over to the meeting. I apologize. There we go. My apologies.
Kevin, I want to go back on the match. And I didn't do it at the time. I'm in my son's house. Not only do I have his cat yowling at me, but he has one of those automatic vacuum cleaners that's in the background. If the state doesn't pay the match and the local doesn't pay the match, is it because there's no match required? Can you explain? I didn't quite catch how you got rid of the match, but is it by moving it into this special category that has no match?
Right. So the program that is eligible for off-system bridges is 100% federal funds. So therefore
Okay.
there would not be required a state or town match.
Okay, all right. Is that a new funding category?
Yes, that's part of this new general fund bridge program that was established by Congress in the new bill.
Tell you,
Okay, that's all I wanted to make sure I understood.
I'll tell you, in the next 5-10 years, there's going to be a big improvement across the state on everything, bridges, roads, paving. I mean, there's a lot of money that's pouring in that'll really benefit the state that's been put in the back burner for many years. This will be a big boost. Wow.
Absolutely. It's
Wow.
kind of it's an interesting position to be in, working.
I just worry about getting the people to do the work. If the market stays the way it is now, the costs are going to continue to climb, and availability of contractors bidding is going to be. I hope it changes, because too bad we got all this money, and I don't think prices are going to be higher, and the work shortage is terrible. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, especially the
Yeah.
inflation
Right.
piece,
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
that impacts things. So the next list here, this is the list of 19 bridges that I spoke about that would be moved into the historic bridge or into the town highway bridge program as part of quote historic bridges. There's the covered bridges up at the top, and then the metal truss bridges at the bottom. These are not projects. These are not currently projects, and we'll be putting forth some language to include that would make these eligible to begin funding them in the fiscal year 2023 budget.
Mr. Marshy,
Yes.
the back on that last slide, the Troy Bridge, is that the one that's burnt and they're going to replace it as a covered bridge, or what's that Troy Bridge there? Are you familiar with that one?
I am, and I'm looking at the bridge number. I'm pretty sure, and Kristen may recall this better than I do. I believe that is that covered bridge that burnt. Was that last winter or winter before?
Okay, yeah.
Kristen,
Okay.
do you recall? And I could look it up for you, Senator, real quick.
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
I have another question. The Linden Bridge, is that the one that's been hit by trucks?
I don't
I am
think
not.
so, Senator
sure.
Kitchell. I remember Joe was talking about a bridge, and there was mention of it, and I don't even know if that bridge at there in the Linden one. It'd be interesting to know which
Well-
one that one is.
Yeah, because I got an email a while back basically saying, why should the state or the town be on the hook for the damages?
Could be the insurance. Right.
And so that raised the question, if that is the bridge that it's been damaged numerous times where trucks attempt to go through it and they're too big to accommodate. It's in Linden Center, and it connects
go
onto
across
Route
all the time.
122. Yeah, and it's been damaged numerous times. And my question is, when we have, I know if, for example, you take out guardrails, your insurance has to pay. So my question is, do we pursue reimbursement for, if in fact we're spending 1.4 million, and if that in fact is the bridge, I don't know, it might be a different one. I assume our standard practice is to seek reimbursement from the insurance.
Well, I can say if it is a state-owned structure, if we're able to find, what vehicle or whatever that did it, we absolutely do pursue that. And I believe the municipalities do the same as well. And of course, this one, this particular bridge would be a town highway. So I assume that the town does attempt to do that.
Okay.
I can't understand why trucks can't figure this out when they go through a bridge. They go under underpasses, they look at the clearance, but yet a bridge, they somehow think you're going to squeeze through. It just blows my mind, because if you're in that business, if your truck is 13 foot high, I mean, and the bridge sign says 12. I mean, I don't know.
And it's usually the local trucks that go through it, which is
I
amazing.
know. That's what I'm saying. It's not over the road from California or somewhere. It's basically local folks, I think. Wow.
And back to Senator Kitchell's question about insurance and stuff, on like that Troy Bridge, which is a total reconstruction, and with the funds that you have there of $1.3 million, is there insurance money as well that goes into that, or how does that work? And if it's going to get us into the weeds of it, but I'm just, somebody caused that bridge to burn by having a snow machine catch fire in the middle of it. And I'm just wondering where insurance comes into that, if at all it does.
Well, again, being a town structure, I guess I wouldn't say I'm prepared to answer that fully, because I don't know what the town may or may not have recouped as part of that, in particular that Troy Bridge. So I don't know that I would have a definitive answer for you. That
That's okay. I don't want to take up all the committee's time
Sure.
to get that answered.
Certainly, if it's a state bridge that's impacted and we're able to go to an insurance company and get some funding back in, it kind of comes back into the general transportation fund, and the funding is used as appropriately, which essentially helps fund improvements on those bridges. But I don't know on the town system, and I'll pause, Kristen, if there's any experience you have in that, working on town highway bridges.
No, I think you're correct, Kevin. It is the obligation of the town to go after those funds.
But I do have one more question on it, and I apologize, but so because it was a covered bridge, we just want to maintain the amount of covered bridges we have in the state. So it's important to put it back as a covered bridge versus just a more modern bridge.
Oh,
That's
boy.
kind of what it is.
You go down that road, you get hung up pretty fast.
Okay, so let's don't.
Yeah, I mean, as with all of our projects, we work with communities, regardless of what type of bridge is there today, and work with them in terms of kind of what they're thinking. I don't want to speak for Kristen or Rob, but I would say, generally speaking, if it's a destroyed covered bridge, many times the communities would like a covered bridge built back. And
We are working with both those communities, Salisbury and Cornwall, to determine the appropriate scope. And there's thoughts that they're kind of on the fence. Some people want a modern bridge. Some people want a covered bridge restored. It brings tourism to their communities.
And I did do a quick check real quickly here on my phone while we're talking, Senator Kitchell, and that is not the bridge in Linden, the one that has been struck so many times. It's a different structure.
Okay, well, Lindenville's got a lot of bridges, so,
Right.
Covered bridges.
Yeah. So, that's in general. There was a few extra slides I can go through. I'll go through quickly just to give you an idea. I skipped over one that's just some definitions of long structures and large culverts that There were some questions in previous testimony, but and maybe I'll just touch on it real quick. Long structures are those greater than 20 feet, and there's some data that I'm going to show you in a bit. That is the federal definition of a bridge. Short structures are those 6 to 20 feet. Both of those may include culverts. Large culverts, they're hydraulic buried structures greater than 6 feet. And then small culverts are those less than 6 feet, to which we have between 40 and 50,000 of those out on the network. So just to give you an idea of what we're trying to do here with this program, there's 1,667 town highway bridges, long structures. Short structures are those that are the responsibility of the towns. We don't get involved with the short structures on the town highway network. So there's 1,667 long structures. Of that, 310 of those are on system bridges, 1,357 are off system bridges. And just to give you an idea, just in terms of condition network wide, 18.2% of all bridges are off system by deck area. And again, we look at deck area, not numbers of bridges, because you might have a 600-foot long bridge and you might have a 20-foot long bridge, and by numbers, they each count as one, but deck area is obviously much more substantial. And then in the entire network, we have 3.7% of the network is in poor condition. 18.3% of that overall network, the 3.7 that's in poor condition, are off-system bridges. And so this program that we're putting forward with these 34 bridges would address approximately 50% of the off-system poor bridges. So again, to your point earlier, Senator Mazza, putting a big dent in the number of bridges, off-system bridges that are in poor condition. And just to give a little bit of an understanding, if you go back to the first bullet, kind of that 310 versus 357, obviously there's a lot more off-system bridges. But interestingly, the on-system bridges carry just short of 3,000 vehicles per day and 171 trucks per day on average. Well, the off-system bridges, they average 282 vehicles per day and only 8 trucks per day. So the on-system bridges carry a lot more of our volumes. The off-system bridges carry a lot less, but the numbers are greater.
A lot of bridges. I didn't realize there's so many bridges. There's a lot of them.
There's over 4,000 on the network that we're responsible to inspect and keep track of, both, both that's interstate, state, and town highways, and includes the short structures on the interstate and state network. So there's over 4,000 that are part of our National Bridge Inspection Program.
Senator Chittenden, you don't have many in your district, I'm sure.
Well, we had one that washed away, but V-Trans has been great in helping us repair it, and now it's back open and everybody's happy.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
And then the last slide, it kind of put a plug in, if you will, just to make you aware. Some of you may be aware of V-Transparency, but questions come up about bridges and, where are the bridges? What bridge is this? What's the condition of the bridges? And on our website, you can go to V-Transparency for a lot of information, but specific to bridges, you can go in, you can click on a bridge inspection map, which will, the bridge inspection map on the right, which would bring up a map here. And you could say, okay, this happens to be Pittsford. I want to look at the Kendall Hill Truck Road Bridge. I can click on it. And this is the bridge inspection report that would come up that gives, municipalities use this quite frequently to understand what our bridge inspection report says, what some of the needs are, that kind of stuff. There's a lot more information that's shown than what is shown on my screen. But
how often do they inspect those, Kevin? I mean, every 2 years, 4 years?
Every 2 years. Yes, we have.
That takes a lot of personnel to get out there and do them all, doesn't it? Wow.
We have 10 bridge inspectors around the state inspecting highway bridges and rail bridges. So, and they all have to pass federal requirements for certifications and take a lot of trainings and stuff. So we have 10 very dedicated employees.
Wow. That takes a lot of time. You got to get underneath the bridge, and you got to use a snooper truck, or in some cases, I'm sure, and then to get underneath those.
They do, and they're very committed and passionate about what they do, which is really important, because they're the ones making sure that our bridges are safe for us Vermonters and the people that visit our state. So their jobs are pretty critical.
That's amazing.
So anyway, this was just to give you kind of an idea, if you ever were interested in, hey, what about that bridge kind of thing, kind of gives you that information and a little bit of background.
So we inspect every bridge in Vermont or town bridges also, or no?
Yes, we are required to, and if I go back, I can show you, so we're required, long structures, there's 20, just shy of 2,800 of those, we're required, and this is required by the Federal Highway Administration. There's a National Bridge Inspection Program. And so we're required to inspect all of these bridges on a 24-month rotation, all the long structures, that's the 2,800. And then we also inspect the short structures, the 1,263 that are on the interstate and state highway. And again, those are the bridges that are between 6 and 20 feet in length, and it includes culverts as well. If we find that there's, conditions out there that maybe there's deterioration that we want to keep a closer eye on, we'll put those on a 12-month inspection, and sometimes even more frequently, just to make sure that we're ensuring the safety of the structure.
So on that, for deterioration, what usually puts them on our radar? Do we do any, is it all related to usage, and do we do anything to track? And when we see higher volumes of network usage over certain bridges, that usually, in your experience, translates to a faster deterioration rate? Or what goes into the calculations of which ones are on a faster accelerated deterioration track, if at all?
It's solely based on condition of the structure. And so there's two different ways we look at bridges. We look at the components, which are the deck, the superstructure to include the beams and so forth, and then the substructure, the abutments, the piers, and that kind of stuff. We look at that, and there's a very standardized rating. And I mentioned the training that our inspectors go through. We look at those components, but we also then break it down into individual elements, where we may be looking at bridge joints, we may be looking at pavement, we may be looking at the bearings that the beams set on. And so every 2 years, we're looking at the condition of those, and there's a condition state that we look at for the components. It's a scale of 0 to 10. And so we're rating those all the time, taking photos, taking measurements. And so, when we start to see those numbers decrease, that's when, we apply engineering judgment to say, okay, it's time to take a little closer look or a more frequent look at this. And, especially on the local network, and sometimes on the state network, you'll see that we post bridges. We reduce the posting on those bridges just to make sure that they're safe. We look at the load rating of those structures. And in some cases we say, okay, it's time to lower the weights that are allowed across this structure. So it's hopefully I'm answering your question, Senator Chittenden. It's all based on the condition and our observations and ratings out in the field.
A quick follow-up.
Yep, go ahead.
Any observed correlation between heavier truck usage on bridges? Or is there any type of study or impact analysis of how much a bridge is used, and does that accelerate the deterioration of it? Or is it really just a matter of going out, looking at the bridges and seeing what condition they're in?
Oh, certainly the loading and the frequency of the loading has an impact, just like it would with any asset that you might have. The more traffic, the more wear and tear that you have, the heavier loads, you're definitely going to see. You're going to see increased deterioration. We've been involved over the years in many, many conversations about increasing weight limits on our network, and that absolutely would have an impact on the structures. Sometimes harder to quantify than others, but we have done over the years several. I think a couple of years ago, we actually did a legislative study looking at that particular issue.
Last follow-up, as we looked at any technologies to track in real time the actual usage of these bridges, and are there studies out there that show that the more you use the bridges, the faster they deteriorate? So there might be some merit in making our bridges more intelligent and tracking real-time usage over time.
And Kristen, maybe you can help me out on this one. I know we have at different times put monitoring on bridges to monitor the loads and see how that's impacting. There's a lot of national research out there as well. Kristen, anything that you want to add?
Well, we have put some sensors on some bridges on the interstate just to verify that how we're load rating is actually making sense compared to what type of loads we're getting. So we've done that on the interstate. We've done that on the state system. We've done that on the interstate twice, as far as I'm concerned. We do put some monitoring on some of our bridges when we build them, just to verify our design assumptions. Our integral abutments are often instrumented because they're a new type of structure, and just to verify some of the design code. A lot of states do that, so we're involved in a couple of studies there. So the answer is yes. that we do instrument bridges from time to time.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's all we had for you today. We just wanted to make sure to kind of give you a preview of what you're going to be seeing in this program and see if you had any specific questions for us. And certainly as you start to get the language and going through the bill, if there's anything else, you know, feel free to contact us and we can fill in any gaps that there may be.
Well, it's a big boost to Vermont, I think. Because some of these would never be taken care of if it wasn't for this money. Wow, that's a lot of bridges. Any other questions, comments from anybody? Well, thank you very much.
Just one
Yep.
comment.
Go
to
ahead.
what-
Go ahead. Yep.
It's, I had some people who were working on bridges within the state and they had said that, you know, it's just too bad there wasn't a maintenance program to get to some of these bridges, beforehand, because so a program like this, I think, is right at the right time. I think it's needed, and I think it answers a lot of the questions of people who are even getting contracts to work on bridges are feeling better that we're looking at these bridges long before they need maintenance or replacement. So glad to see the program.
Thank you. We certainly in recent years have kind of increased our efforts and our funding towards bridge maintenance and bridge preservation. And we're working to continue that, especially with some of this additional funding as well, because if we can get to it, and treat it well, it just needs something relatively minor before it needs a more substantial rehabilitation. We're certainly saving funding in the long term.
I'm just amazed that 10 people can inspect all those bridges. That's a lot of inspections there. Wow.
As I mentioned, a very dedicated group of folks.
It would have to be. It must take some time to inspect a bridge. You just can't drive up to it, look at it and say, okay, it's all right, because that decision, then you got to write it up, right? And say exactly what you think the problems are, because it's just amazing.
These folks are out in chest waders and climbing on ladders. And for some of the more complex bridges, we have our large, some refer to it as the snooper truck, the bucket truck that can boom them out and down under so they can see what's going on. But absolutely, there's it's an interesting job, and at times can be a dangerous job for these folks. And
I know, because
they get it done.
You got to climb over banks and down the rivers, and it's just not everyone is different. I'm sure,
Absolutely.
Okay, any other questions from anybody? Senator Perchlik, I don't see you. Any questions?
No, and I mean, I guess the only question which I think or know the answer to is like this, all different, each bridge is different, obviously. So some of these bridges will just need a little bit of work and some of them need to be replaced, right?
Yes. And we evaluate, and Rob and Kristen on the project delivery side. On my side, we kind of identify the projects, look at the funding, get them kind of in the pipeline, and they go through all of them in detail. They scope them, they look at what the most appropriate treatment is, and where we can, that if we don't need to rebuild it and we can just preserve it, that's what we do.
Yeah, many of those, the historic bridges that were on that list, there's a plan for rehabilitation. There always has been. And that's a condition of using federal money, is that we preserve, historic structures when they're deemed historic. And so all those metal trusses will likely just be rehabilitated to carry modern load.
Well, Senator Ingalls, if you're looking for a summer job, you can inspect some bridges up there. I'm sure you got a few of them up your way.
Put your hip boots on, we'll go do it.
you and Jane. Jane, you want a summer job? Or?
Yeah, I need one to go with my garden.
That's right. That's right. Okay, well, thank you very much for coming this morning. Give us an overview. Very interesting. So we're addressing a lot of our real problems out there, and that's the good news. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Okay, committee. I don't think we have anything else this morning. You're going to have some time. Some of us have a noontime meeting, and Jeannie, could you take us off live so we can ask the